So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. This year marks a very special moment for our BME ECR network. It's our 10th BME Early Career Researcher Conference, a space that was created to support, affirm, and champion early career researchers as they navigate academia's most critical and often most challenging stages. Today's session is an in conversation, not a formal interview. It's an opportunity to reflect honestly and openly in allyship, leadership, and responsibility, and what this looks like in real life, not just in policy statements or strategies. I'm delighted to be joined by Professor Anthony Woodman, Vice Chancellor of the University of Hertfordshire, former Provost and Senior Deputy Vice Chancellor at the University of West London, and very importantly for me, a mentor, champion, and trusted ally. I deeply appreciate you making time to conduct this in conversation.
Bernadine, it's always great time to always be able to have a chat with you. So actually, the pleasure's mine.
Professor Woodman has consistently shown what it means to use leadership and influence thoughtfully and visibly. From my recruitment at the University of West London in June 2019 until my inaugural lecture for my chair, October 2024, his support was not only generous, but intentional, and that will forever stay with me. It reminds me how powerful, genuine allyship can be, particularly for Black academics navigating spaces where we are still underrepresented. So today, we're not here to talk about allyship in the abstract. We want to explore what real allyship looks like in practice, why it matters, how it's learned, and what responsibility senior leaders carry, especially when they hold power. Professor Woodman, thank you for joining us and for the many ways you continue to show up, not just for me, but for our wider academic community. So to begin, I'd like to ask you, not as a Vice Chancellor, but as yourself, when you hear the word allyship, what does it mean to you personally?
Well, thanks ever so much, Bernadine. And thanks for asking the question, because it's made me self-reflect a lot on what it means, because until we were probably doing a lot of stuff together, I hadn't really thought about allyship. You quite rightly said, today's conversation is not about me in a role, it's me as a human being. And a lot of this is based on, well, how do you feel as a human? What's right? What should you be doing? And I think the authenticity comes first. The label of allyship, say, comes something later, and yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about how that is a term can be powerful. But for me, it's also making sure that doesn't constrain me from going, you know what's right, you know what's wrong, and you know that from a humanitarian perspective, we should be working collaboratively. You've actually taught me, but there is a word for it. Allyship.
Right. So I want to then ask you, was there a moment you realized allyship, now you know what allyship is, was there a moment when you realized allyship had to be intentional?
Yeah, I'll be again very open. Our conversations, Bernadine, were, we've been very open about saying, well, what does that mean? And as you unpack them and you reflect, you realize, okay, yes, allyship as a word, as a concept is important. And see, for me, it's overlaid on a belief and an authenticity that I had. So it's quite an interesting one about how do you develop, or how do you, I'm not saying you should teach allyship. I think what it is, it's about having, whether it's myself, whether it's others, having the courage to speak truth to power in some degrees of going, yeah, no, that's great. There's an authenticity about how you're operating. That actually is allyship, Anthony. And sometimes, can you actually use that word? Can you use that terminology? Because many people will then respond and they'll go, that's powerful. Just because you act as you do, Anthony, that's nice. You're a nice person. Actually, if you're prepared to say, yeah, I am an ally, how I behave authentically is allyship, that's important. And really that came from what you said to me was, you do believe, you do behave authentic around this, utilize that terminology so others understand your behavior is something that is a real force for the positive to help.
Loving the word you're constantly saying, and that's authenticity.
Yeah.
Let's unpack that a little. What does authenticity really mean to you?
I mean, there's loads of other definitions. Mine is be your true self. Yeah, just don't make, and I think we may go on to about roles, responsibilities as a leader, is don't don't put constructs that you believe you should do because you're in a certain role. Go by what you believe. It doesn't mean that you can say yes to everybody as you become a senior leader, but what it is, you have fundamental principles. And I think most of us can actually, we can start with a plethora, but we come back to, fairness and aspects like that. That's where authenticity comes. It's not wearing your heart on your sleeve, but it's being open, transparent, and don't just say things because you think people want to hear them. Say them because you believe it. And if you don't believe them, be authentic and say you don't believe it.
And actually, it takes me back to when I first met you. And I said this to you, and I'm happy to share with everybody that's listening that your word is your bond. From the very beginning, you said to me, Bernadine, when we were exploring a new course, etc., you said, Bernadine, we will see what we can do. We'll see what happens. And you stuck to your words. So yes, I truly believe you are an authentic human being, which is really
Thank
good.
you.
So thank you for that. So now let's move on to allyship in leadership and power. How does allyship change when you hold institutional power?
It's a really good question because I wasn't sure as becoming, I'd been provost and yes, my role I had played within University of West London. But when I then became a vice chancellor, I did reflect on that. And I think the number one aspect is if you are confident, you are authentic in your belief, is to make sure that you do speak about that as part of developing the cultural identity of the institution. And I'm not going to say that whether badges around diversity are not important. I'm not going to say around policies are not important. But actually, I would argue that to make those successful and make the change we must do in society, you do need a leader who then comes in and goes, actually, I believe in this. I'm actually going to show you why I believe in that. And you do proactively have to use the word allyship. I mean, there are many colleagues that I know and was at UWL and certainly here in Hearts absolutely believe in getting equality, getting inclusion. But actually, as a leader, you've got to be positive about that. And you can't be a bystander. That's not an option. And so that's been able to come in, use every opportunity. Opportunities like this are brilliant because of believe in what we're doing and as an institution to take it forward. Because you do have a lot, and one of the things you learn as you get into a really senior leadership position is you be careful what you say because people do act on what you say. But that's also a force for positive, as a positive ally, but an ally that also is ready to reflect, to go, how does allyship evolve? What does that mean at an institutional level? How does it go from me and project out wider? Then that's my responsibility as an ally.
What does it mean to be visible in your support? Because a lot of people have said you are very visible in your support and you might be a minority in your visibility as a supporter.
I wish I wasn't. I agree with you though, but I honestly do. And I think it's probably the thing that I will reflect back on my career and be most disappointed about, that there aren't enough. And again, there's lots of components. I mean, the first and foremost with me, and you know me, is as a scientist, how can I make these differentials around what we do? You and I know that very much within biomed science, my whole reason for being visible and positive was it's what I believe in. But secondly, as a scientist and wanting to understand disease and how we diagnose earlier, how on earth can we not understand the need to have diversity? It's such a fundamental. That's where this started from and has been a real powerful aspect. So therefore, being visible, being positive about it feels normal to me. I can only be a strong leader based on my academic integrity and strength. The ability to understand human biology and the breadth of what that looks like is, I would be lesser as a scientist. I'd certainly be lesser as a human being if I didn't really believe this, but actually also in my technical area. So I don't understand why there aren't people who are very comfortable at being able to say, actually, this is such a strength. How are we going to make health and medicine within the world better over the next 10, 20, 50 years? Actually, please, let's start looking at whole, humanity species. And it's not trying to be too grandiose, but actually that's exactly where it comes from. So saying that out loud, wanting to come through, let's look at this in this whole systems element. But don't forget, at the end of the day, there are really great humans involved with great talent. Why is that so difficult to say? Yeah, I'm at a loss at that. I don't get it. So yeah, I'm visible. But I'd say to anybody who's, can I be an ally? You'll be amazed at what you also get back from working with total diverse groups of individuals. And it's easy to say, oh, you can enrich your life. Absolutely. I've enriched my career and myself as a human being. So it all comes back down to that authenticity. Is at times I'm at loss why people can't. And it's a genuine, I ought to have a very good in-depth answer to why, but no, I wish more people just saw why it's so important.
You just said something about having been in the midst of diverse people. The thing that came back to my mind was when we, as Black women, well, thanks, when you were at UWL, you supported the 100 Black Women Professors
Mm.
program now. You wanted to meet with us, and
Mm.
you did meet with us, and you listened to everything we had to say. At the end, summed it up by saying there's so much energy and goodness in this room.
Absolutely.
It needs to be put into good use. And I remember you saying that.
And it was. So there were also, I mean, that was with colleagues that I had worked with within the university. But again, the constructs and the structures hadn't allowed those individuals to flourish. You and I were fortunate. Well, certainly I was fortunate. You had to put up with me at times. We were working
Well,
together. I could see the strength and value. But that's again where I saw that, we come about what's the role as a leader is organizational structures, not intentionally, and I'm not trying to say it, can get in the way of allowing people to flourish. And it's one of the reasons here that the 100, when 100 professors initiative, we've also started here at the University of Hertfordshire, because I wasn't sure at the beginning, but I tell you, it doesn't take long when you go, whoa, that's probably one of the largest returns on little bit of time. What a return you get. That it sounds almost, oh, that was great. I was used to my time. Actually, again, it was, institutionally, there was real talent that allowed to come forward. But it also made me reflect to go, you need these initiatives. I could easily have this great idealistic view and go, well, naturally, everyone wants equality, don't they? They're going to do it. Well, no, we know they don't. And we know structures get in the way of that. And I
mm,
think that initiative was such a good example. And I can see that energy. That energy will never get suppressed. And come on, from an institutional point of view, is that not what you want? Of course it is.
absolutely. So I'm just going to follow up on my previous question. So how do you balance risk, responsibility, and silence?
For me, the biggest risk is silence. That I'm afraid is keeping silent. Is, I would say, if I reflected on myself as a leader, that would be foolish, disrespectful to individuals, and actually in the worst interest of the institution. So I think from that point of view, I don't see a risk. There may be people who disagree with my views, and I'm delighted that freedom of speech matters to me as to many people. Very happy for people to have an alternative view on that, but not to base it on not knowing the facts or seeing the evidence. And we've talked about that a minute ago. We talked about energy coming out of groups, but also if you start to see myself as a better scientist, standing biology better, there's a whole host of reasons why actually silence, doing nothing, is by far the bigger risk than perhaps people who say, sorry, Anthony, I disagree with what you're saying. But it's having that conviction and authenticity to be prepared to do that, be prepared to sit down with people who will have an alternative hypothesis and go, okay, I'll listen to your views, respectfully, and I'm sure you can listen to mine, and hopefully we get forward. But it's being prepared to do that and not shy away. I really wish it wasn't that case, but we talked about it a number of times. We're not at that point yet, and we got to keep going.
You see, I know you've touched on this before, but I need to really, really dive deep into it. Why are you not shy? Why are you that person that, yeah, I will say sometimes it may be considered a risk to speak out. Why are you that person? Why? Why do you care even?
I think it does go back to being brought up in a family where right from wrong mattered, having the conviction to understand the world around you, look for where I can make a difference, not look for inequality because that was a white male thing to do, but to do it to say, actually, fundamentally, it mattered to me to, do I have the ability to make an influence in trying to right bits of inequality? And I've been fortunate throughout my career, having lived in countries outside of England, where particularly the time when I lived in India, was you realize that looking there to support and help develop social problems, poverty, You can't do it on the mass, but you can do it as the individual. It is literally working on one or two people. And that's then where you go, well, actually, without becoming evangelical about it, you do realize the own power you have. And the more successful my career has been, the more I've realized that's come by having fairness and being open and looking to reduce inequalities. Actually, that drives you and catalyzes you. And it comes back to that bit why you're prepared to speak out about it and go, you do realize we just make the whole, and it's getting soft. The whole of maybe our lab, maybe our institution, maybe our country. It doesn't matter which ones of those, make it better, more effective. And isn't that what we all want? Is to hope that everyone, our families, our friends succeed. And it's that fundamental. And I think it's easy. You can come up and I could come up with some great leadership speak, but actually it comes down to Anthony as the human, Anthony who knows right from wrong, and utilize that to be able to take things forward.
Yeah, it's a brilliant response. And this is what you've said to me before, and I just wanted to share that with everybody else that's listening. Can I ask, if you don't mind sharing, what was your experience like in India? What did you do in India?
So I was very fortunate. I had been, I was a professor with a really good team at Cranfield University, but I wanted to get a better understanding about what leadership meant, and globally. I wanted to get understanding. This was in the sort of early-ish 2000s. We could see that the UK would increasingly become an international higher education hub, and also as a country, the diversity side. So I had an opportunity to go out and be chief exec of a small drug discovery and education organization. So although I was based in Bangalore, we had campuses throughout India. So I was traveling most of the time. But what was really telling was just before I went out, Emily came out with me, and my son and daughter were less than 10, or they were about, I think my son might have been 10 at the time. We'd landed in Delhi and we'd been there about 2 hours, and they both said, but these people, that the buildings look challenging. They are sadly a slum, but they said they're coming out and they're dressed immaculately and they're smiling. And so I turned to them and said, yeah, exactly. The material things you think matter are, they are irrelevant compared to how many people overcome challenges. And that's been really important to them. I mean, they're now 34 and 31, and they still, those come through. So again, for me, that struck me, that it had that impact. And that comes to this scalable impact of those experiences. So again, seeing that was to go, don't come through that, very narrow white Englishman lens, come through from the wider lens that sometimes the metrics for success or impact are going to be very, very different. So again, it's that about opportunity, and opportunity can come in a number of different forms, and it can look very different. And I think that's what that taught me from there. And I'd argue that a lot of those are scalable, and it just happened to be my experience as we're living there. Yeah, and the differences again with there was I also made some amazing friends that, because of coming from a different lens, you were able to see, okay, there's also a number of different ways to better solve some of these problems. But, don't get too carried away. Do them. It is sort of one person at a time, but you can have an impact. Don't give up because you don't think you can help the whole country. You can't do that. You can help a few and use them as a catalyst to carry the change on through.
Sense. Thank you. So why do you think Black minority and ethnic academics and early career researchers still need visible allies?
I sort of touched on it when we talked about the WEM program, is that structures, expectations. Yeah, one of the things that very much learned from, and we talked about that experience in India, but also, working with yourself and other colleagues, was to go, it's so easy to come through one narrow lens of the experiences that say I've had, and think, well, surely everybody has that. One of the key elements of allyship is that you understand the diversity of those experiences. And therefore, coming into biomed sciences is a really tricky area in terms of how it fits into what people study in universities. Some people, and I disagree, having come through a biomed background myself, go, well, if I can't get to medicine or dentistry, I do biomed. And that, but then in a way, that self-selects a certain way of coming in through. Secondly, we've talked about this, the delivery of biology, science coming in as a track to go into biomedicine, still not evolved that much in the sense of being able to inspire people. Let's take, something that you and I have talked about, because we both talked with Dame Elizabeth, still the way we looked at how we manage and treat sickle cell, for example. Again, if I was coming through not as a white man, and you see that, you go, well, what's the point going into this discipline? There's not going to be any respect for me. I'm a professional. I've got huge talent. Who's going to listen to what I'm doing? And actually, even once I get into my role, am I going to see how am I helping develop other people who are going through similar experiences? So, there's not been that much of an attraction through. And to add to that, looking through, it's not always clear coming into biomedicine, I would say, from whatever one's background, where that track goes. And therefore, there's been too much luck, contact, support perhaps from wider community that we know isn't there for everybody. So, there's been multiple things. But, I'll always come back to the floor at the end of the day is to support biomedical sciences, UK, Europe, beyond. We need people who understand the diversity of conditions and disease states that human beings experience. And that's why it's so important that we have that diversity of expert talent coming through in the biomed scientists.
Just reflecting on what you're saying now reminds me why I've started the Black in Biomedical Science undergraduate conference, which we launched at UWL, and you, as usual, came and spoke to the students there. And now our young Black biomedical scientists now can see a future for themselves. They know now who to reach out to. They now know of the networks available to them, which is really, really important. My goodness. Just having this network and this organization is providing resources for young Black biomedical scientists that probably wouldn't have such resources, knowledge, contacts, network available to them. Hearing their feedback from these conferences that we're running is just so overwhelming. There's hope for us. We know what we should be doing now. We know who to reach out. We're seeing visible role models, which is really important. So, I want to say thank you to you, because what people will not know listening is you inspired me to kick that off 4 years ago. And for the fourth year, we're running it at University of West London. So thank you for all your support in making this happen. Now, my next point is on early career researchers. So we have the undergraduates, so it was inspiring. But what about those that are now postdoctoral researchers? Why is allyship really important to them as of that stage?
I mean, for those of you who are in that part of your career, assure you, it's the hardest part of your career, and it is incredibly hard. But if you add on to that, a lot of the things that we've been talking about is having come through a diversity of lens to get to that point, which to me is such a strength, but also can mean that some people may have had a developmental experience that helps them, others haven't had that, means that focusing in on early career researchers is important. But I think if you overlay that with what we've already said, structural areas don't always help those of us coming from Black or a non-white background. And also against that, the opportunity, we've talked about what inspires you as an early career researcher. We've talked about authenticity. There has to be an authenticity and a drive and an energy in your research. As I say, it is hard. It is, it's draining you. You can't always see where the light is at the end of the tunnel. Therefore, there needs to be an understanding of and support for diverse projects, backgrounds, and getting the funding for that diversity. And I mean, I am pleased. I mean, again, we come back to some of the work you've been doing. People like the MRC understanding the importance of supporting that, not just because it's a tick box of someone's told us this we should do, going, no, actually, there's real strength in being able to do this. And I think that's been a great initiative. That's why having a spotlight on Black early career research is important. There is still a lot of support, background platforms we can do. You're all ready to fly, but actually we want to give you the best potential to be able to fly, because we'll get better researchers, better outcome, better productivity, speed in getting our research out there to making a real difference to the whole of the population of whether it's the UK or beyond. That's why you need that spotlight. It's not that I really wish, and my view with all of these, it'd be lovely if we didn't need any of them, but we do. We need myself to help support you and shout about it, but we need you, Bernadine, and others to go, no, let's do these initiatives. Because the only thing I can say, and I have to say it's very weak and fluffy, is it will get better if we give you this support initiative, and it's not because that's a gift, it's actually recognizing, going, actually, we all have a role to be able to help our early career researchers.
Leads me on nicely to my next point. What advice would you give to leaders who want to be allies?
Look at yourself first. And I think you've heard me all the way through was authenticity. Look at yourself first, and are you comfortable in being able to say, I'm an ally and I want to be an ally? I think, it will mean different things to different people. But what I hope ultimately it comes down to is to go, you are someone who recognizes that development of individuals, our families, wider into the institutions and country comes from having the best talent. And it's the best talent, and the best talent is very wide and distributed. And that's why you need to make sure that you reduce structures that close off talent. That's not good leadership. But also, again, and I think for many leaders, it's going, this isn't just some sort of initiative at the time. This is about how we are going to grow our institutions, how we're going to make them stronger. And yeah, as a result, it benefits the country and where we're going. It's just look at yourself and don't get fixed. Don't just listen to what I've said. That I'm just giving you my experiences. The only thing I can say is it is worth that reflection, and it is worth you looking as to what that looks like for your institution. And I can guarantee you, both institutional and personally, I think you will have an enriched career life as a result.
Do you think there are common mistakes or misconceptions about being an ally?
I think I've intimated it, but I'm happy to say it outright, is that there is an EDI policy in an institution that has a tick box and says do this, this, and this. That's not allyship. That's correctly having a policy in your institution as someone should, and making sure that it works. But that's not allyship. That's the allyship goes beyond that. It comes to some of the things you've said. You've used words like visible, risk, leading from the front. I mean, maybe subliminally in there. It's going beyond. The rest is the minimum. I should absolutely, and I don't think any university, any research-based organization wouldn't do that. But it's putting yourself personally out there and proactively looking to ensure you see areas where things aren't working. We've talked about initiatives out there, being prepared to go in and say, actually, it's not even about, put the funding behind it. It's actually going inspire other colleagues to go, do you know what? Actually, that's an excellent thing to do. So it's that to me is the difference between what you should do, what legally you should do, but actually going over and above that and personally going, this will happen, and I am going to check it's happening, and making sure you bring others along the way with you.
In everything you've said, what would you say would be one quick win for a leader planning to be an ally?
I mean, it's the quick win is what I'm doing here. I've been at Hearts here now for 6 months. Do you know what? Actually go out and talk to your staff, go out and talk to your students, go out and look at the diversity and listen. I mean, I've been really taken, and I hope that there will be colleagues and students from Hearts that see this, is that the return is amazing. People like that communication. So it's good old fashioned look at people, listen. Okay, I can do some of these things, and I might be able to do some other things in 6 months, and other things might take me 6 years. But do that. It's not difficult per se, but personally it can be challenging, and I understand that. It's not everybody finds that easy, but look to do it and look to make sure that you listen on it. And then if you can't act on it, be transparent as to why people can't. Because again, I found that with people is not everything you do, even in allyship, there'll be mistakes. My view, I've always said, look, tell me, Bernadine, where I'm getting this wrong. So again, to people say, go out there, talk. You're not going to get it right all the time. But actually, if you talk to people, most people, and it doesn't matter what the situation is, they'll probably go, look, Anthony, that was great, but what about doing this? What about doing that? And be big enough and prepared enough as a leader to go, yeah, I've learned a lot from that. I am going to change the way I do it and take it forward. You've been very good in the interrogation, the conversation, Bernadine, at asking the right questions. Look, for me, all it is I think where we started is where I'm going to finish. Allyship is something that you probably will come to. You don't start by going, do you know what? I'm going to be an ally today, and I'm going to do this. And to me, and I'm happy for other people to correct me, is to go look at yourself, look at how you're behaving, and then see whether that maps with some of these areas. I think in most people it does, but it's as with too many things in life. Don't put yourself under pressure. Do spend that time, engaging with the whole diverse number of colleagues doing different roles at different times. Listen, self-reflect, and then do get to that point where you go, yeah, this is me. And if I don't become an ally, I'm actually being disrespectful to myself. And that's what I would say to people. If you see it there, then you have to acknowledge that what you are doing is allyship, not to get brownie points, not to suddenly go, oh, such a nice person. Just being open and honest with yourself. I think that would be my only reflection.
This year marks the 10th BME ECR Conference. If you think about the next decade, what gives you hope and what responsibility do institutions and allies still carry? I know we've really looked into this a lot, but just to summarize everything, next 10 years, where do you see it?
One of my first things would have been naively, and I probably live in an ivory tower, it would probably be nice to say in 10 years' time we didn't need it, because all of the challenges that we've talked about, reflected on, have been overcome, and the delineation around this is not there. And I'm not that naive. Sadly, I think you will be needed just as strong. And why is that? Some of that can be labelled. I'm not going to go down the line of more political side of things. I think there are waxing and waning of different views. That will always be a challenge, sadly. But if we take that to one side and we start to look about funding for research, the type of research we do, ensuring that the diversity in our research and our research outcomes are maintained, means that actually having a challenge group, a lobby group, a support group for certain aspects of our research talent, it will be, I'm actually going to say, needed even more. So there's the one side. I'd like to say we don't need it at all. I actually think it's going to be needed more and more. And the mistake, if we don't do that, is we will so have not taken what is great, amazing talent. I want to see this country thrive as a research base, as a knowledge creation base, and that can only come by a diversity of talent. And one of those talents is, and I'll be explicit there, is to say Black early career researchers are a huge resource and talent. And one, how can we shout about that and make sure that the people realize, look at supporting these researchers? But secondly, they also, in 10 years' time, I would hope, is we're going to have a great pool of people that you've supported through with the initiative, who can come back and help us even more and be real positive role models to go, yeah, we're still not there with where we want to get to, but look, we are. Things are getting better. Can we take them forward? So let's hope. That would be my reflection of real success for this initiative.
Now, we've had conversations about various organizations that are supporting us. So our initiatives and increasing the pool, both for STEM and non-STEM activities or research. The MRCs, the welcomes, various other UKRI initiatives. Are you encouraged by this?
Yeah, I am encouraged by it. And I think what's important, we keep the momentum on this. At a time when it's understandable that research funds are tight and difficult. And I can see some encouragement there. There is about specialization. It is about supporting talent. It's supporting things that will really make a difference to the UK. If you look at things like the industrial strategy, the overlap, there is a real opportunity there for us to work with talent. What we're doing here with Black early career research is say, this is a pool, this is a talent. And those institutions are recognizing that. And actually, there is an injustice that we don't include them, but actually there's bad management of talent if we don't include this diversity of great researchers that we have.
We're encouraged because they are now having the conversations with us and they're now listening to us, which I think is really important, because in everything, it's the listening, it's the ability to open the door and say, let's have a conversation. And since that's been happening, I think hopefully in the next 10 years, we'll see, as you say, the momentum continuing.
That's what's important.
It's important. So I'm going to thank you now for your time. I'm going to thank you for your continued allyship, and the allyship you give. It's just not words, but it's in action. And I'm really grateful for that. I'm grateful to you for being that visible ally. I'm grateful for your time to have this conversation. I'm grateful because you have been authentic. I know you for many years and you haven't changed. So I thank you for that. And I thank everyone for tuning in and hope you've thoroughly enjoyed the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bernadine. Thank you very much.